Hello YouTube, this is Team NACL with a deck profile to give you. What is this of, Josh?
This is going to be my Yugi Kaiba generic brain dead beatdown.
Wow. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. Why don't you start placing these out for us?
So to start off, you run 2 Summon Skull. You could try 3, and I know other people like to use Judge Man, but I think that you see this just the right amount because it clogs if you have too many in your hand and not enough monsters or tribute.
Cool.
And then you run 3 Legend, the Mystical Genie of the Lamp, because he's the biggest guy at the time, because Mechanical Chaser wouldn't come out until Tournament Pack 1. And you basically just run the max that you can get, and then you have to run 3 of Neo right here because he is the second biggest, unless you're running like, you can do Battle Ox with, what are the equipped spells? It's
So you got Invigoration and you got like a
and
full
the
moon
field
card.
spells.
Yeah, you got Forest. That's the one I use, but more on that later.
And then you have your pair of Summon Skull, or Giant Soldier of Stones, because you need a good wall for when you're kind of behind in card advantage and you know they're not going to be able to get over it. Now on to the effect monsters. Oh no. Funny story about this Giant Soldier of Stone doll is that one time when I was younger, my parents got me one for my birthday, or maybe it was Christmas, and my brother, who was 4 years younger than me, stuck it in the oven without us knowing, and so it got melted in the bread drawer. So they went out and bought me another one of those. So
Ouch, one fried boy.
So onto the effect monsters, you run 3 Wall of Illusion. It's probably, I personally think it's one of the best effect monsters in the game, aside from like Maneater Bug, just because it can't be run over by common things like Legend, and if they do get over it with something like a Summon Skull, they're going to have to dedicate another tribute for it. So then you run 3 Maneater Bug, which is honestly one of the biggest staples of the format. It's a really good card, except for when your opponent knows to use swords. But if you're smart enough, you're not going to put swords.
Or when it's U-shaped and your opponent always knows it's a Maneater Bug.
Well, that's kind of a problem too, but that's why I hold it down with my hand whenever I'm playing.
He doesn't like this, everyone. He was like that and he holds his finger on it.
Which is interesting because you can also use it to bluff if it's not a Maneater Bug, and you can trick them into being afraid of something that's not there. So the last 2 effect monsters that I run are Trap Masters, a pair of them, just because things like Reverse Trap is very hard to get around when there's not such a thing like Mystical Space Typhoon or like a Heavy Storm or Harpy's Feather Duster. And so you kind of, because Remove Trap, people, if you hear someone say run Remove Trap, don't. Because the only things that it can get rid of are Ultimate Offering and Dragon Capture Jar, since it only checks face-up traps and you can't use it like D-Spell to be kind of like a pseudo-MST.
Good old Fat Master.
Yep, good old Fat Master with his small defense and his effect that only works like a third of the time.
But he's still cool.
He's still cool, and he still gets rid of trap holes, which are annoying.
This guy looks like the guy that reads the Anarchist Cookbook. He looks like that guy.
Yeah, definitely probably on some watch list somewhere.
Oh, jeez.
So you run the core 5 limited power spells. This was before they had a forbidden list, so you wouldn't have to worry about seeing any of your favorite cards that you can't be used. You just run what you can. So you have the 1 Monster Reborn, which is helpful because it dodges Trap Hole completely, because Trap Hole doesn't include special summons, and if you read this right here, this is considered a special summon.
Ooh. That text.
And then you run the Dark Hole because you can only run one of it, and sometimes when your opponent's like overextending and has a lot of like wall style monsters, you just kind of need to like blast away, even if it means taking out some of your guys. Change of Heart's good because you can use it with you can take their thing and tribute it for Summon Skull, or you can use their own Maneater Bug against them, or push for that extra damage if you think you've got game. Rageki's Rageki. I mean, your opponent has monsters, you don't want them to have monsters. That's about as simple as it gets.
Think about it 5 times.
And then you have Pot of Greed here, and it just says draw 2 cards. There's nothing more to it.
But Josh.
I don't have time for memes, John. tired of that meme.
I've had enough.
So you run, I personally like running 2 of each of these. People card destruction is limited or semi-limited, and it's for good reason, but at the same time, it can kind of hurt you if you're playing a long grind game against a burn deck per se, where you're getting stalled out and you're going to end up losing by duck out because you've used card destruction with too big of a hand. Swords, it's pretty good unless you're playing against a burn deck, because you can sit there and stave off their attacks for a bit unless they have the random D-spell, which not everyone runs.
Yeah. I don't know, D-spell's like really good with, I like D-spell with Trapmaster, because even if you miss with Trapmaster, then you can follow up the next turn.
And you get the knowledge too, so that way you can play around like a trap hole and you won't commit until you know you have enough resources to get through it.
For sure.
So run 3 Fisher. It's really good if you can use it in combination with swords if you really need to, or if you run over or run into a wall of illusion and your monster gets bounced, but you still need to obviously get rid of it because you only have so many power spells. Fisher is good for taking out problems like that. It's good removal. You run the 2 D spells because swords, if you're playing beatdown and you want to put on damage as much as possible, having to sit there and wait behind the swords while they sit there and accrue card advantage is not usually good. And if they have 1 in the back row or 2 in the back row and you're trying to put on game, you can check to see what it is, even if it isn't a trap or a spell, so that way you can play around it and be a little bit smarter. Run 1 Soul Exchange. Running multiples, I guess if you really wanted to go hardcore on tributing your opponent's monsters, you could bump it up to 2 and then run another Summon Skull. But I already see Soul Exchange too much as it is, especially when it says skip your battle phase. But it's good to, when you're running out of Fishers or you've used your Dark Hole and Raigeki, to just kind of clear away something like a Aquamador or like a Wall of Illusion.
Man-eater bug. That's what I always do. I always tribute or face down monsters. That's what I use Soul Exchange for.
And so now you're on to your traps. You run 3 Waboku just because they're the stank ladies and they can help you
stank lady.
Help you stall if you're in a bad spot behind in cards, or if you don't want to take damage for whatever reason. This game's slow enough that you're not going to get OTK'd most of the time, but in the event that you're still trying to stall and you're still trying to not absorb some damage, Waboku's pretty good. Run 3 Reinforcements just because when you're sitting there and you don't have a Summon Skull and you have a Legend and you're staring a flipped up Wall of Illusion right in its eye, you kind of just need to get over it with whatever means necessary, even if that means kind of taking that neg to have your guy bounce back to your hand, and then at least the Wall of Illusion's gone.
Yeah. Problem card. Main phase 2 Fissure on a Wall of Illusion is very, like, one of the most common plays, I think.
Yeah, and it's really helpful just so that you can because nothing hurts more than getting a nice established Summon Skull and having to run into a Wall of Illusion.
Yeah.
And so this kind of helps. It helps mitigate that problem because Wall of Illusion, like I said, I think it's one of the best cards.
Yeah, that's one of the problems with Summon Skulls. Once you summon Summon Skull, it's just a big target goes on its head. It's just like, oh, everything wants to kill it.
Problem about this card is when they flip reverse trap, which kind of, it's annoying, especially since you lose your reinforcements and they still get to keep their monster and you take damage, and it's just like the worst of all scenarios. So that's why you got the Trap Masters, and you can use the D spells for knowledge. But sometimes you just like run into it and sad days happen.
Sad days, sad life. So
the last 3 traps you run are the trap holes. I didn't think that Dragon Capture Jar warranted a spot, since barely anyone plays this format, and the only person that I know that plays this format doesn't play dragons.
But I did play it against you for a while because I knew he was playing dragons at first. So, like the good friend that I am.
Nothing like maining cards that directly cripple your friends, am I right?
You are correct.
So I run the 3 trap hole, even though me being a good friend, when John was running burn, these were dead every single time that I saw them, but I didn't change it up. So when you play against other decks that actually normal summon monsters rather than just setting and passing, this is really good to kind of deter them, especially if they're going for like a big play, like basically doing anything that doesn't involve Monster Reborn in some capacity. You just get rid of it. That's what you got to do. And if they're smart, they'll try and play around it, but it's hard to play around this when your only real way is to use Monster Reborn.
Yeah, you just gotta bait it.
Exactly.
Just gotta play with it.
Well,
All right.
that about wraps it up.
So what format is this again?
This is for 2002 Yugi Kaiba, just the structure decks and LOB with the first ban list, which is not a ban list at all.
Right. And what is your name?
My name is Josh Wiles, part of Team NACL here, one of the founding members with my good friend John Gregory.
Yes. And this was a pleasure having this deck profile with you guys, and we'll see you on the next one.
Pleasure to be here.
Bye.